So I guess I could introduce you, or you could introduce yourself.
I'm Randy Nichols. I'm Executive Director of Maury United Ministries, which is a transportation ministry in Maury County.
Awesome. And you are?
I'm Johnny Jaggers. I'm currently the board chairman of Maury United
Awesome.
Ministries.
I easily could have introduced both of you because we've done a lot of ministry together over the years, and you're my dad.
That's right.
So it's a thing, right? It's a thing.
You who I was.
Absolutely. And if I didn't, something's wrong with me. So why don't we get to? I told you I have two primary questions, and we'll just have a lot of discussion.
All right.
So one of the first questions I want to ask has to do with the whole thing of vision. As a church, and I don't know, Johnny, if you know this, but as a church, we're taking up an offering, and we're giving it away. And it goes back to, see, Johnny was at Hampshire when I was there. We didn't have elders per se, but he was one of my elders. There's no doubt about it. And one of my prayer partners, we many times would be praying at the altar for God to move. And some of the things you're seeing as a church right now is happening because of that man's prayers and because of that man's prayers. And you need to know that. So I totally got distracted and went off on another tangent. But we're taking up this offering like we did at Hampshire, and we're going to give 100% of it away. And we're going to do 6 different ministries. It's interesting because at this point, there's over $6,000 in that, and we haven't even taken up the offering yet,
Wow,
which means every ministry already has $1,000.
Hey, wow.
So you get to be one of the first ones to hear.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Super excited about it. But we're going to take up that offering the second weekend in March. And so this is just to kind of help our church know who we're giving to. So as far as moms, and by the way, if y'all hear in the background, it's really windy and the roof is talking to us right now. The metal roof is talking to us. But as far as the whole thing about vision, what we've been casting and talking about, one of the key points that we've discussed is that God-given vision meets people at a point of need. There's no doubt about it. You can look throughout Scripture. God gives vision, and it's tied to there's a need that He wants either us to be a part of, but all the time He's the provider, He's the one. But He wants us to partner with Him in that provision. And so saying that, like Maury United Ministries, I mean, you said transportation ministry, we can kind of figure some of that out. But I'd love to hear you say, why are we starting this ministry, and what is the need?
Okay. Well, back in 1998 is when it all started. I had been revived. I'd been in a revival service that just kind of fired me back up.
That was Brownsville, correct?
That was Brownsville,
Yeah.
in my walk with Christ. And when I came back from that, we went 3 different times, but when I came back and was settling back in the community with this new fire, it was like I kept thinking I needed to go to more worship services because, they were intense, and so I did that. But after a while, the Lord started speaking into that fire and saying to me, we don't need to go to more worship services. We need to get Jesus out of the services and into the community.
Yeah, that's good.
More. And so the Lord just kind of touched my heart to start looking around Maury County to see what the needs are of those, who are less fortunate than ourselves and maybe even in deep poverty.
Right.
And back then what I found was that if you lived in Maury County and you were very poor, you could have housing and you could have food, and so you could get by.
Right.
But if you wanted to get out, if you wanted to get out of poverty, the first problem you were going to run into was transportation. Mm-hmm. There was some transit in the county, but it wasn't geared to people who were looking for work.
Well, even back then, it was less than there is now.
Less than there is now. So what we decided to do was try to find a way that we could just help people get to job interviews and fill in job applications, and then if they got a job, help them get to working back until they could save up enough money maybe to put a down payment on a vehicle and kind of help them to give a boot up out of their poverty. And so just basically called a few friends and myself, and we started letting it be known that we were offering that kind of a service. And I was working as a mechanical designer at the time for an engineering company, and I kept that job, and I was able, thanks to cell phones, there was good timing, for all of this.
Yeah. This was back when they were brand new. And it was
I remember when we first got set up, I had 2 cell phones. One was for me, and one, whoever was driving today, at the end of the day would take that cell phone to whoever's driving tomorrow. And we were passing around another cell phone.
Yeah.
But then within 2 years, it was like everybody had cell phones. So, we didn't have to do that anymore.
Right. Now you can actually call them on their own cell phone.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's a lot easier that way.
So there was really good timing, for all of that.
Right.
So we just kind of cranked that up and got going with it. And first thing we found out is people, when they know that you can give transportation, they're not going to just call you for a job. They may have a medical appointment.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we started doing that. And then people needed personal transportation, maybe to go to the grocery store once a week or something like that. And so we started doing, you can't say no, when somebody calls. If you
Well,
have the
you
ability.
can, but
Yeah, you can. Well, actually, that's another story. But
but you don't.
If you have the ability, you don't want to say no.
Sure,
And
yeah.
so we started doing that too.
Well, who, I would say who doesn't want, but as believers, who doesn't want people to be able to get to the grocery store or to get to a medical appointment? Because you had some that were doing dialysis and.
Yeah, we would take people to dialysis and back.
Right.
They usually could have driven themselves, but they'd be so weak
Sure.
afterwards that they actually weren't allowed to drive back. And
Right.
sometimes family could take them one way, but then they had to go to work, and so we'd bring them back. So we just
Right.
basically all the time, we've always tried to accommodate ourselves to whatever the need is.
Right.
And be flexible. And one of the ways we were able to do that is, and so I'm asking the Lord, okay, how at the beginning, how are we going to get a van? How are we going to, da-da-da-da.
You're going to drive people and shuttle them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Lord just kind of spoke into my heart and said, just use what you've got. Use what's already there.
Right.
And so I checked it out with a lawyer or two and found out that if you have liability insurance and you want to drive for moms, then your liability insurance covers you and your passenger because you're not being paid by moms.
Okay.
And so that cleared the way for us to say to anybody, we're asking you to be a missionary in Maury County. We're asking you to get out on the local mission field.
Right.
And you're going to drive your own car, you're going to burn your own gas.
Yeah.
And there were people who were willing to do that. So that's how we got started. I kept my job for 6 years. By the end of the 5th year, the ministry had grown to the place that I had to make a decision.
Right.
I either have to go full-time with it or just shut everything down and kind of walk away from it. And I couldn't do that. So
Yeah.
I remember the surrender. It's like surrendering actually to a call.
Yeah.
And so I told the Lord in DuPont parking lot up at the Sontara plant in Madison, and close to Nashville, Tennessee. I remember the moment I said, if you'll give me a year to put things together and to get loose from this job, then I'll go full time with it. And it was scary, because that meant my source of income would also be the ministry itself.
Yeah.
But the Lord gave peace and He gave provision, and over that year we were able to get our 501c3 together, form a foundational board of which you were a part, and of which Johnny was a part. And so, we got some real history going here because that was 2004 when we went full time. The reason I can remember it, it was a leap year, and I quit my job on February the 28th, took the leap on February 29th of leap year, and was a full-time musketeer.
I don't know if you know this, but that's the same year I surrendered to full-time ministry as a pastor.
Yeah.
was in 2004 as well.
A lot of things were happening that
Yeah,
year.
it was soon after that. It was, I think May, it might have been the turning point. And then I did some work between that and becoming the pastor
Yeah.
at Hampshire. But August 8th was the first time I preached there.
Yeah.
October 18th was
Yeah.
my first day as pastor,
Yeah.
which wasn't really full time. It was,
Right.
it took full time and hours in
Right.
ministry, but it wasn't really a full time thing.
Right.
But that was an interesting season for all of us, wasn't
Yeah.
it?
And you were talking about vision, though. At the beginning of it all, we saw more that could be done than we were able to do at first. And it took until 2012 to be able to form the Monk's Garage, which is more of a concept than an actual building facility. And so we always wanted to take the next step in helping with transportation. And the next step was, if you have a passenger who is working hard, doing the best they can, you're getting them to work and back. They could do better if maybe they could get another job or a job with different hours that were outside of the parameters that we had. Then
Yeah.
what they needed was a car or a truck or a van. They needed a vehicle. And so
Right.
in 2012, we were able to launch the Mom's Garage and begin to receive donated vehicles, which we're still doing, by the way, if you have one.
Yes.
So we tell people when that car starts to wear out, if you feel like you could give it, a lot of times you can get more for it than if you traded it.
Sure.
For a tax deduction.
Sure.
But anyway, I digress. But anyway, so we started that, and as of this last year, we've now been able to give 36 vehicles
That's
to
super cool.
passengers or people that were recommended in Maury County by social service agencies or churches.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love it.
pumped about
love
that.
it. So Johnny, you're the chair,
Yes.
the
Correct.
current chair. So how long have you been on the board this go around?
Probably this go round, I think I'm in my second year, maybe.
Okay.
Going to the third, the next term.
Yes, I don't remember the terms. It's been a long time
You serve
since we-
two, and then you can serve an optional 3 if you want to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. So as the chair, like what is it that drew you to be a part of Moms?
Well, just a little bit of history. I was saved later in life, around 1997. My brother led me to Christ, and Randy was good friends with my brother. So Randy, I got to meet him and they were doing these things called lay witness missions at the time. And
Yeah, those things
I
were
was a new
fabulous.
Christian, didn't know anything, but got invited to go on some of those. And through that process, Randy became a mentor to me. And besides those, he spoke often into my life and helped me grow in Christ. So, I knew Randy when this was coming about, and so he had talked to me about thinking about what they were doing and possibly
Right.
coming on. And I'm trying to remember, it had to be around that time you and I got to know each other.
Yeah.
When you were talking about it was around the same time as the ministry. I do remember Randy inviting us to your first sermon.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and shortly after that, became pastor. But just the concept of what he talked about is, as sort of a new Christian, you're always kind of asking the Lord, what can I do? How can I serve other than the normal church duties? And you have a grandiose idea sometimes of being a missionary or something like that.
Right.
And the concept was wonderful. You don't have to go somewhere to be a missionary. You or the drivers, the people that are with these people every day, or every other day, or once a month, as some of us do, you get to really know and speak into their life. And when he talked about coming out of poverty, that's one thing. But boy, what an entry in to be able to get in a vehicle with somebody and be able to for a while, just like Dottie and I, you don't say a whole lot. You just get to know the people.
Right.
But you find out that so many of them, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, but so many of them have come to know Christ through some of the other ministries that are in the county, and just what he said, don't have means of transportation. But they get to be with somebody every day the ones that have come to know Christ need encouragement. And
Sure.
every day, twice a day, if they're going to work every day, and I'm speaking of the ones at work, they get to be encouraged by being around Christians full of the Holy Spirit that are there for a reason, that really to minister to people.
Sure.
And then for the ones that don't know Christ, so many stories. I mean, I used to love the 12 Days of Christmas, and Randy has a wonderful way of presenting what Christ has done in their lives as they progressed. And there are so many stories.
For those that don't know, the 12 Days of Christmas was a publication prior, coming up to Christmas, that told testimonies about what God had been doing in the lives of. It wasn't always just riders. Sometimes it was drivers too, right? I can't remember. Or was it mostly just riders?
Just stories,
Yeah, just
actual
things that have been
happened.
going on
Yeah.
in ministry.
And
Yeah.
we don't print that anymore, but I've taken some of those stories and put them on the website,
Yeah,
and it's, you just click on 12 Days of Christmas, and you
That's
can read
good.
some of them if you want to.
I wish you could know everyone that, I know God knows, and that's all that matters, but I couldn't tell you. Randy could probably come closer to tell you how many people that have had their lives completely changed. Not only to know Christ, but what he said, some of them get the vehicles. You're working a job and you're making a paycheck, but you can't afford to throw down the money for a car.
right,
But you can afford the money to do the maintenance on it.
right.
And Randy might have been going to go there, but the wonderful thing about when people donate a car, it's put up to working condition. All the safety
Right.
issues, anything might be done. But also, instead of having just given a car, they're given insurance. You got to make sure you have a license, insurance, their title is paid for, and 3 months insurance.
You pay 3 months liability insurance and car and the tags and license and fill the tank up. What we want them to do is drive away without it costing them anything.
Yeah,
And then they have 3 months to use that. I think of it as a mule, It's like if you're a farmer and you have a hoe and you have 40 acres, you can probably work enough ground to feed your family, maybe.
right.
But if you have a mule and a plow, then you can work that whole 40 acres and you can prosper. And to me, it's like when we're able to give a vehicle to somebody, it's like giving them a mule, instead of a hoe.
Yeah,
And they can prosper. So then they have that 3 months of span that they can work enough, maybe get extra work or something like that, a better job, whatever, to where they can afford their own insurance after 3 months. So,
that's good. As far as like the ministry itself, it's come a long way. Like there's a lot of different things because you went from part-time to full-time doing this, and I think relieve some of the fears for people. Because isn't that maybe one of the first things is, wait,
Right.
I'm using my car, my insurance,
Right.
I'm responsible.
Right. Well, for one thing, you're covered if you did have an accident. For another thing, there's such a prayer effort going behind you when you go out.
Yes.
We've been on the road for 23 years now without a reportable accident at all.
That's so good.
Yeah, and we have probably 300 families that pray into this ministry, and they pray for protection
Yeah,
for our folks who go out, and God hears those prayers, I believe, because we're trying to help people.
yeah,
But I got a call yesterday from a lady who wants to drive, and she's from a local Cumberland Presbyterian church. She just wanted to, and looked on the website and called me. And that's the first time that's happened, by the way.
oh yeah,
Yeah, and so she was wondering about it. She sounded a little bit nervous. So I said, how would you like to go with Marilyn next Wednesday morning and just ride with
that's
her
a great thing.
while
too.
she's, doing her route? And she said, oh, that'd be great. And
Yeah.
so she'll be riding with Marilyn next Wednesday, and then probably she's going to volunteer for the Monday morning after that.
That's so cool.
yeah.
It's a great plan.
Yeah.
And the deal is, even if she'd have said, I don't know if this is a fit for me, at least try. Like, right, go out and
Right.
see.
Right.
Because I've driven before a long time ago.
Mhm.
And I just remember all of the passengers were super grateful.
Yeah.
Like, nobody was like, oh, well, what?
Yeah.
They were super grateful. They were great conversations. Some of them, even if they sat quietly, That's okay too.
And drivers too, if they're a little antsy, you need to know that my job is to watch out for you.
Yeah.
My job is to make sure you're safe. And so anybody that calls, it's the first time they need a ride, I give that ride. I go out and meet them, I find out their situation, and then if I'm okay with it, then I'll put them on the regular schedule
Okay.
for our other volunteer drivers. And if we don't send women to pick up men, sometimes when we know the guys and we know they're absolutely safe, and we have a lady who says, I want to go do that to give you some relief, because I'm the fill-in guy most of the time.
Right.
If a lady's going out, and they'll say, I really want to, I don't have any problem with it, and we'll say, okay. But it's not normal operating procedure
Yeah.
that we would do that. So we're watching out for everybody and to keep them safe. And most of these folks are just folks.
Yeah, they're just people trying to get to work and
They
back.
just
They're
need
just
a
trying to
little
live life. They're trying to.
Right, and they have families, and if anybody's really strange and weird, then I never put them with a regular a regular volunteer driver.
You drive them.
I'll drive them.
Yeah.
Because I'm weird enough that I can.
Man, we've got some stories, don't we?
We do. We do. You remember back in the open home days?
I remember the open home days and living in a homeless shelter, and
We became accustomed to
we had
weird.
rooms full of weird.
We did.
It was like,
And it was out of control.
yeah.
But we didn't get hurt.
No.
God was watching out for us.
Yeah.
So it's, He
Yeah.
watches over.
Some of our best stories come from those days. There's
Yeah.
no doubt. You know what? People do that. You're like, yeah, people do that.
Uh-huh. And let me say too that when you volunteer to help somebody out there where they are, it fills your life with stories. It fills your
Yeah.
life with adventures. It fills your life in ways that just coming to church and sitting in a pew cannot do. And it brings life when you're trying to bring life to other people. It comes back on you. I call it a holy loop. You know, if you try to help somebody else and you put yourself out to do it, it doesn't. If somebody's watching out for you while you're doing it, it doesn't get heavy. It doesn't get to where it just drains you of everything.
Right.
It's a source of strength. You know, that I drained myself somewhat for somebody else. So what does God do? He pours
back in.
And it's fresh.
So there's a message there.
Yeah, it's fresh.
Yeah.
And so it's like fresh wind, fresh fire.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we've used that analogy many times of if you take a pitcher and you don't ever pour it out, and it just sits, it becomes stagnant. And even to some point, there's this poisonous or bacterial, there's this nastiness that occurs. You got to pour it out. And so in the pouring out, it gives God room to pour something fresh in.
Right.
And I love that visual when it comes to fulfilling or being there to help fulfill the needs and what have you of other people.
And God is the one that pours back in.
Sure.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
So it brings us closer to Him in that we need Him more in a good way
Yeah.
so that we can give more.
Yeah.
So it's a good loop.
And that's that whole Matthew 5, that which you've done to the least of these you've done unto me, meaning He not only receives, but He gives the blessing for the receiving. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it.